Hey folks, my name is Akshay Dhavre and welcome to this series on estimations. Now today we're going to talk about the challenges with time-based estimates and why are we almost always wrong about these estimates. Now when we start talking about story sizing, the obvious first question that comes to your mind is why bother? Right? What does it matter? Why are we doing this complicated thing that you need a series of videos to teach you how to do? When seemingly you're trying to answer a very simple question: when will this get done? And that's the question that everybody is interested in: your clients, your product owners, other teams who are dependent on you. Everybody is interested in understanding when will this get done. And so if you were able to answer this question in a simple way, like it'll get done on Tuesday or in 2 weeks or in 4 months, and be right about it, then you would do it. And we do try to do it. But deep inside, we know that we are not really confident when answering this kind of a question. I mean, on the face of it, how long will it take to do this is a question that you've answered hundreds of thousands of times in your life. How long will it take to get to office? How long will you take to swim 20 laps? How long will you take to make coffee? How long will you take to make this presentation? All of these are estimation questions, and we answer hundreds of these questions every day, every week. But like I said, deep down inside, we are never confident when we give an answer to this question. And if you try to uncover this a little bit, you will understand that there are actually three complicated factors that we are taking into consideration when we are trying to answer this question. And that's why it becomes so difficult to answer. The first thing that you have to do when you're answering this question is you have to understand what this is. Making coffee, going to office, swimming 20 laps are very different activities and they have their own complexities. And so the first thing that you have to do is understand what does it take to do this? What is this? What am I dealing with? And understanding that is important because only then you can answer the rest of the question. Now, the second thing that you have to do is you have to now gauge your ability to do whatever this is, right? Your ability to get to office, your ability to make coffee, your ability to swim. And you might be good or bad at each of these things to different degrees. So, this is a subjective thing that you're trying to answer now for yourself, and that makes it a little more complicated. And you're trying to marry the two now. What is your ability, and what is this thing that I'm doing? But it doesn't even stop at that. The next thing that you have to do is you have to predict everything that will get in your way while you're trying to do this. Right? Let's take an example of going to office. A couple of years ago, before the pandemic hit, we all commuted to office every day. Um, Probably for many years, many months at least, right? And so every day you're using the same route, probably using the same mode of transport and getting to office. And so you know what this is, you know what it takes to get to office, you know how far it is, you know which route to take, you know your ability to get to office as well because you're probably using the same mode of transport. So you know how well you drive or walk or ride a bicycle or hail a cab, and so you know your ability to do these things. But in spite of that, it would be very difficult for you to say, I'll be in office in 23 minutes and be right about it. Yeah, because the third factor about what will get in the way is just impossible to answer. You cannot predict what kind of traffic you'll meet on the way. There might be a blockage, it might be raining, you might have to take a diversion, you might get a flat tire. There are several things that can go wrong while trying to do this very repeatable, very well understood task that you do every day in your life. And so, even for such a task, you cannot be completely confident about when will this get done, when will you reach office, how long will you take to get to office. Now, let's get back to software development scenarios. in software development, you are trying to develop new features, and so the question that you're trying to answer is how long will you take to develop this feature, or how long will you take to fix this defect. And if you're doing any meaningful software development, this is going to be a very different set of problems every time, because that's what you're doing. You're solving new problems when you're writing code and building new features. You're not doing the same thing, because if you were doing the same thing hundreds of times, you would automate it. And so in a software development scenario, this becomes an even more complicated question, because even the this is not repeatable. It keeps changing all the time. So now you're trying to predict everything that will get in the way, while you try to use your ability to do something that keeps changing all the time. And of course you're going to be wrong about it, right? It just makes sense now. And there are three main reasons that you need to keep in mind because of which you're going to be wrong about your time-based estimates. The first one, like we said, is that there's just too much guesswork. So you're guessing what is this thing that I've never thought of before, because it's a new feature that's going to change the world. You're now thinking about your ability to do that, and then you're trying to predict everything that will get in the way. And so that's just too much guesswork, and so you're very likely to be wrong. The second reason that you're likely to be wrong is because when you're talking in terms of time, there are just too many options to choose from. I've heard people say that this will take half a day, 4 days, 7.5 days, 11 days, 17 days. There's just no end to it. And just statistically, the more the number of options to choose from, the higher the probability that you will be wrong about the one that you choose. And so that's the other reason why you're very likely to be wrong about your time-based estimates. And the third important reason is that in software development, very often we see that architects and senior developers and tech leads are asked to answer this question on behalf of a team of people. So you're not just gauging your own ability to do something, you're making a guess on behalf of a bunch of people who will be at different levels of expertise in each of these different things that need to be done. And that just makes it almost impossible to get this answer correct. And that is the challenge with time-based estimates. And that's the reason why we need an alternative mechanism. And StoryPoints probably is that mechanism. We'll try to see how that might help in the rest of this series. Thank you so much. See you in the next one.